They say time heals everything, but no one tells you what to do when your past walks into the boardroom wearing a suit and a smirk and becomes your new boss. I hadn't seen Aiden in 5 years, not since the day he broke me with a kiss, and left me with nothing but silence. No goodbye, no closure, just a voicemail. It's better this way. So imagine my shock when I walked into the Monday morning leadership meeting and saw him sitting at the head of the table like he owned the world. Because now, he did. The company, the title, the power, and somehow, me again. Our eyes met. I froze. He didn't. Just gave me that same infuriatingly calm nod, like I was a stranger. Like I hadn't once memorized every line on his chest, every scar on his knuckles. Like I hadn't loved him so hard I forgot myself. "I'll be taking over this department," he said, eyes brushing over mine like I was invisible. "Let's make this transition smooth. No distractions." No distractions? Then why, 3 days later, was I being randomly assigned as his executive assistant? Why was he suddenly taking interest in my schedule, my outfit, my life? And why did he look at me like that? Like he remembered everything. But it wasn't until I overheard him on the phone one night that the truth slammed into me. "She still thinks I'm not over her," he said, voice low, dangerous. "So I'll use the one thing that always got to her." A pause. Her replacement. Me. Suddenly, everything made sense. The glances, the sudden promotion, the way his wife, his current wife, looked at me like I was trash. I wasn't part of some romantic rekindling. I was part of a plan. His plan to destroy the woman who replaced me. Only this time, I'm not the girl who cried over him for months. I'm not the woman he walked all over. This time, he thinks he's using me. But he has no idea what I've become. And if he wants to play dirty, he's about to learn I can bury him with a smile. My name is Elara. I used to believe in clean starts, second chances, and the kind of love that could survive anything. But that was before Aiden. Before I learned that even the most beautiful things can rot from the inside. We met in college. He was a year ahead, charming in the kind of reckless way that made you want to jump without thinking. He had a smile that could crack through concrete walls and eyes that always seemed to be hiding a secret. I was the quiet, ambitious one. He was the loud, brilliant disaster. We shouldn't have worked, but somehow we did. For 3 years, he was my world. Late-night drives with the windows down, whispered promises under blankets, dreams of a future wrapped in the glow of cheap fairy lights. We talked about running our own business, maybe a boutique consulting firm. He'd handle clients, I'd handle operations. It felt like we were building something unbreakable. Then, one day, he just disappeared. No fights, no slow fade, just silence. His numbers stopped working. His social media went dark. Even his best friend wouldn't answer my calls. For months, I was a ghost walking through my own life. I kept replaying everything in my head, wondering what I missed, what I did wrong. My friends told me to let go, that he wasn't worth the tears. But how do you let go of someone who promised to be your forever? Eventually, I forced myself to move on. Not for him, but for me. I got a job in a mid-sized marketing firm, worked my way up slowly. Late nights, coffee-fueled deadlines, promotions that didn't come easy. I earned everything I had. No shortcuts, no handouts. My heart was still bruised, sure, but at least I had a purpose. A path. Then one morning, just as I was finally feeling like I'd made it out of the wreckage, he came back. Aiden. Clean cut, richer than before, and with a gold wedding band on his left hand. And a smirk on his lips that said he knew exactly what he was doing. When he introduced himself as the company's new executive director, I swear I forgot how to breathe. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't show a single crack, just looked at me like I was someone he barely remembered. And yet, the first project he took on? Mine? The first assistant he requested? Me? The first team dinner he hosted? Sat beside me. I should have run. Transferred. Quit. Done anything but stay. But something inside me wanted answers. Wanted closure. Or maybe just revenge. All I knew was, this time I wouldn't be the girl who got blindsided. Because the moment I saw the look in his wife's eyes when she saw us together, I knew something deeper was at play. This wasn't just business. This wasn't just awkward history. This was war. And I'd already lost him once. I wouldn't lose myself again. It started with the necklace. A simple silver chain with a tiny moon pendant. Delicate, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Except I was. Because 5 years ago, on the night of my birthday, Aiden gave me that exact necklace. "Because you're always chasing the moon," he said, kissing my forehead as he clasped it around my neck. "It suits you. Mysterious, distant, beautiful." I never told anyone where it went after the breakup. I assumed I'd lost it during one of my many breakdowns, when I threw half my room into boxes just to avoid the memories. So imagine my confusion when I saw his wife wearing it. Not a replica. Mine. The tiny scratch on the left side of the pendant? Still there? The faint engraving on the back, E+A, always? Still clear. I saw it during a team gala. She arrived an hour late, red lips, wine in hand, walking straight past Aiden like he didn't exist. He didn't even glance at her, until she kissed some guy on the cheek and laughed loud enough to turn heads. Then his jaw clenched, and suddenly he turned to me. "Elara," he said, his voice low, his hand already at my lower back. "Come dance with me." It wasn't a question. Before I could even react, he'd pulled me into the crowd, his grip firm, possessive, familiar. I tried to push away, but he leaned in and whispered, "Smile." So I did, because everyone was watching. But inside, I was burning. "You're making a scene," I said through my teeth. "That's the point," he muttered, eyes not on me, but across the floor, on her. Watching her kiss another man, wear my necklace, act like he didn't matter. "I don't want to be part of your games, Aiden." His hand tightened just slightly. "You already are." I pulled away as soon as the music ended and practically ran to the bar. That's when his wife, Ariana, approached me. "You're Elara, right?" she asked, her voice too sweet to be sincere. I nodded cautiously. She sipped her wine. "Cute dress. Not really his type, though. Then again, maybe he's just nostalgic these days." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She smiled, showing perfect white teeth. "Oh, come on. You don't think he brought you here by accident, do you? You were always his little comfort toy, something safe to crawl back to when real life got messy." And just like that, every wound I thought had healed split open again. I stood frozen as she walked away, hips swaying, necklace glinting under the lights. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about unfinished business. This wasn't even about Aiden wanting me. I was being used, not to reignite an old flame, but to make someone else jealous, to prove a point, to twist a knife in a marriage that had already begun to bleed. And I was the perfect weapon. Or so they thought. Because if they wanted war, they'd get it. For the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything. Not the campaign presentation I was supposed to lead. Not the emails piling up in my inbox. Not even the fact that my dream promotion might be slipping through my fingers. All I could think about was them. Aiden, Ariana, and me, caught in the middle of whatever toxic game they were playing. Was he really using me to get back at her? And worse, was I letting him? I started noticing things I hadn't before, like how he only asked me to stay late when he knew she'd be picking up her things from the building next door. How he accidentally brushed against me in the hallway, just as she was walking past. How she never said a word, but always made sure to glare long enough to leave a burn. One evening, I stayed after hours to finalize some reports. The office was quiet. Everyone else had gone, except Aiden. He walked into the conference room without knocking, rolled up sleeves, tired eyes, and that scent I hated for still making my chest twist. "Working late again?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I have deadlines," I replied, eyes on the screen. "You always did like to stay ahead." I didn't respond. He walked closer. "I miss this." That made me look up. "This?" I echoed. "You mean the part where you ghosted me for 5 years and then made me your assistant so your wife would notice you again?" He didn't flinch. Instead, he said, "It's not like that." "Oh? Then what is it like, Aiden?" My voice cracked, anger, hurt, all tangled up. He ran a hand through his hair. "It's complicated." "No," I said quietly. "It's actually really simple. You wanted to make her jealous, and I was easy, familiar, disposable." He didn't deny it, just stared at me with that unreadable expression I once found so intoxicating. That night, I cried in the stairwell like some pathetic side character in my own story. Not because I still loved him, but because I hated that a part of me wanted to believe there was more to this. That somewhere underneath the manipulation and silence and years apart, the Aiden I loved still existed. But the truth? I didn't know him anymore. And maybe I never really did. The next morning I found an envelope on my desk. No name, no message. Inside was a photograph. It was old, grainy, slightly bent at the edges, but unmistakable. Me and Aiden, college campus, arms wrapped around each other, laughing at something off camera. It wasn't just nostalgia. On the back, in his handwriting, were 4 words: "I never stopped remembering." I stared at it for a long time. Was it guilt? A warning? Some twisted apology? My phone buzzed. "Unknown number. She's watching you. Be careful who you trust." My heart dropped. I looked around the office. Everyone moved normally. No one seemed to be looking at me. Except Ariana. She stood by the elevator, chatting with someone, not facing me, but her eyes flickered toward mine in the reflection of the glass. That's when the paranoia set in. Had she sent that message? Was Aiden trying to warn me or manipulate me deeper? Was I imagining all of this? I didn't know who the villain was anymore. And the scariest part? Maybe it was me, for still being in this building, still playing their game, still hoping for answers from a man who already shattered me once. The next morning started like any other. I forced myself out of bed, ignoring the pit in my stomach, put on a navy blazer to hide the exhaustion, and told myself I'd stay invisible. Just do the work. Stay quiet. Avoid both of them. But fate doesn't care about our plans. At 11:13 a.m., a calendar notification popped up on my screen. Client Strategy Meeting, 11:30, 14th floor, conference room, B. I checked the invite list. Aiden, myself, 2 external clients. That's it. Fine. Except when I arrived. The room was empty. Lights dimmed. No documents. No clients. Just Aiden. Alone. I stopped at the door. "Where's the team?" He didn't even look up from his phone. "Meeting got rescheduled. Didn't you get the update?" "No." My voice was flat. "You sent it 10 minutes ago." He finally looked at me. "Since you're here, we should talk." "I think we've talked enough." "Elara." He said my name like it still belonged to him. I turned to leave, But the door opened before I could. Ariana walked in, hair perfect, red lipstick back in place, and holding a folder in her manicured hand. "Am I early?" she asked, all faux innocence. I got the meeting time straight from Aiden. I froze. Aiden straightened his collar. "No, you're right on time." Something about his tone made the hairs on my neck rise. That's when Ariana smirked and pulled out a photo from the folder. Another old picture of me and Aiden, and then another, and another. "Seems like someone's been quite the nostalgic boss," she said sweetly, laying each photo on the table like daggers. "Hiring your ex as your assistant? Sleeping in the same building? Having private meetings?" I stepped back. "What is this?" Aiden rubbed his temple. "Ariana, don't." "Oh, I will," she snapped. "Because you think I don't see what you're doing. You thought dragging her back into your orbit would fix whatever's broken in us? Or did you just want to rub her in my face?" Aiden stayed silent. I couldn't breathe. "You said you erased her," Ariana said, stepping closer. "That you burned every photo, every letter, that she was gone." I looked at him, horrified. "You said that?" He swallowed. "I was trying to move on." "By lying?" I whispered. Ariana laughed bitterly. "Don't feel special, sweetheart. You're not his redemption story. You're his crutch, his favorite prop." And then she dropped the final blow. "He didn't leave you 5 years ago because he couldn't choose. He left because I was pregnant." Silence. Aiden's face went pale. "Ariana, I lost the baby," she said, eyes locked on me. "And he still married me. Not because he loved me, but because he felt guilty. And now you're back, and he thinks this time he gets to rewrite everything." My knees nearly gave out. He left? Because of that? I had imagined every possibility, every betrayal, every ugly truth, but never this. "You should have told me," I said to him, voice breaking. "You should have given me a choice." He looked up, eyes filled with something I couldn't name. I didn't know how. "That's always your excuse," Ariana muttered. I didn't wait to hear more. I walked out, heart racing, ears ringing, world spinning. This wasn't just a love triangle anymore. This was a story built on grief, guilt, and a truth buried so deep it was rotting everything from the inside. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who was more broken, him, her, or me. I didn't go to work the next day, or the day after. I told HR I was sick, but the truth was, I couldn't face either of them. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photographs on that table. Her red lipstick curling into a smile, his silence, and that word echoing in my mind. Pregnant. 5 years. 5 years of silence, of crying in the dark, wondering what I did wrong, of breaking and rebuilding myself from scratch. All while he buried the truth under guilt and convenience. And now I was just a pawn. Again. So I did something I hadn't done since the breakup. I returned to the cafe where we used to go every Sunday morning. Same creaky chairs, same smell of burnt espresso, same scratched-up table by the window. And I sat there, alone, trying to remember who I was before Aiden. That's when I heard the bell above the door. I didn't need to look up to know it was him. He always had that same anxious pause after stepping inside, like he was scanning the world for something he'd lost. "Elara," he said softly, approaching. I didn't speak. He sat across from me without asking. "I thought you'd block me." "I should have?" "I didn't know she'd ambush you like that," he said, guilt thick in his voice. "Why did you never tell me?" I asked. "About the pregnancy? About why you really left?" He looked down at his hands like they held the answer. "Because I was ashamed," he said finally. "Ashamed that I didn't fight harder for us. Ashamed that I stayed with her out of guilt. I thought if I could build a life with her, Maybe it would hurt less. Did it? No, he said quietly. It just made the ache worse. I nodded slowly. So you used me to get back at her? No, he said, eyes flashing. I didn't plan it like that. At first it was just a selfish mistake. Hiring you, keeping you close. But then, being around you again, it made everything real. I remembered what it felt like to actually feel something. My throat tightened. And the necklace? I asked. You gave that to her? I didn't, he said. She found it. I guess I never threw it away like I said I did. She started wearing it after she found out you were working here. She wanted you to see it. She wanted to hurt you. She did, I whispered. He leaned forward. But I didn't know until I saw your face. Tears stung my eyes. I spent 5 years grieving a man who couldn't even give me the truth, I said. Do you understand what that does to someone? To be erased like I was never real? You were always real, he said, voice breaking. You were everything. I just didn't know how to hold on without ruining you. You already did. We sat there in silence. The cafe was quiet, but my pulse roared in my ears. Finally, he said, I still love you, Elara. I looked at him, really looked. The man I once knew, and the man who sat before me now. Both were broken, but only one had the courage to admit it, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to forgive either. You don't get to say that, I said. Not after all this. Not when you let her tear me down just to soothe your own guilt. I'm sorry, he whispered. I believe you, I said. But I still can't come back. After that cafe conversation, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt. God, I was shattered. But because something inside me had finally gone quiet. Aiden had said he still loved me. And maybe, in some twisted, tangled way, he did. But love without truth? Without courage? It's just another word for control. I handed in my resignation the next morning. No dramatic scene, no final confrontation, just a clean, typed letter on HR's desk. I walked past his office without looking in. He didn't come after me. And I was glad. Because I knew if he did, if he said my name with that familiar softness, I might hesitate. And I didn't want to hesitate anymore. For the first time in 5 years, I was choosing me. Not the version of me he remembered. Not the version Ariana wanted to destroy. Just me, the real me. I found a new job 2 weeks later. Smaller firm, less prestige, but more peace. And I smiled, genuinely, on my way to work for the first time in months. I stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. I started sleeping through the night. Healing wasn't instant. There were still moments when I'd hear someone laugh with a familiar rhythm or see a stranger with his walk, and my heart would forget what it had learned. But I didn't reach for the past anymore. I let it stay where it belonged. About a month later, I got an unexpected package in the mail. No sender name, just a black box wrapped in gold ribbon. Inside was the necklace, the same one Ariana wore, the one Aiden had said he never gave her. Only this time, it was broken, split down the center like a clean fracture. And a note. 5 words, scrawled in messy handwriting. You deserved the truth. A. I stared at it for a long time. No apology, no plea, just a simple acknowledgement of damage. And for some reason, that meant more than any bouquet of flowers ever could. I didn't respond. I placed the broken necklace in a drawer with other things I'd outgrown. And I moved forward. Some nights, I still wondered about him. Whether he ever found his way out of that spiral of guilt and regret. Whether he ever learned how to love without hurting people. Whether Ariana ever stopped playing mind games and learned how to grieve what she lost. But those thoughts passed like passing clouds. Because the real ending wasn't about them. It was about me. about finding my voice after years of silence, about learning that closure doesn't always come from someone else's apology. It comes from choosing not to wait for one. And as I sat on my new office balcony, watching the sun set over unfamiliar buildings, I realized something. I wasn't the girl he left behind anymore. I was stronger, wiser, whole, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to be alone. Not because I had to be, but because I chose to be.